What is good, everybody? Juliana Page here, and I want to talk about our favorite word, maybe not so favorite word, and one that I sure as heck didn't have a lot of lessons early on in, and this is the word boundaries. But I want to give new context, new perspective about this to really help coach a lot of you, hopefully, to understand that this is a good thing and something that really demonstrates a statement of personal and mutual respect, not only for yourself, right? Not only respect for yourself, but also for respect for other people. Because if you honor and respect yourself, that only means that you're going to likely honor and respect other people too. So here's the thing. What is it a statement about? It really is a statement about what we accept, what we allow, what we accommodate, and what we tolerate. Take some notes. So this is really a statement of personal and mutual respect about what we accept, what we allow, what we accommodate, and what we tolerate. Check that out. Just those words. What in relationships specifically do you accept? Do you allow? Do you accommodate, right? And tolerate? What are those things? And even making a list, write some columns down a sheet of paper and make a list of what those things are, because it's likely that you can find where some hurts, habits, and hangups come from if you do this exercise. Okay, so what are boundaries for? They're really to help keep us safe, okay? And they're really not about building walls and making sure that your block ministry is real strong, because it seems like on social media, that's what people are about. The minute somebody gets offended, block, okay, bye, right? Not mature, not okay, but that shouldn't affect how you show up. And they're not walls at all necessarily to keep people out. It's parameters to protect yourself and keep you safe, okay? So think about it. If there was a young toddler, right, running around outside, you would put up a fence, right, to make sure that if a frisbee drops and you look away for a second, that kid is not running into the street or something, right? It's a parameter to keep this kid safe. So here's the thing. Self-respect and self-worth, that's a you job. You don't allow other people to define that for you. And if you don't respect yourself, and if you don't know your worth, other people can really make a habit of taking advantage of you, taking you for granted, using you, manipulation, control. A lot of weird stuff can happen when you don't honor and respect yourself, okay? So here is the thing. I want to make sure that I share with you as this was developing. Let me see. Oh, having self-worth and self-respect really means too that you won't let others decide who you are or determine your sense of self-worth. That's not going to be determined by other people. They're not going to define you. When you have that, you can't let other people tell you who you are and let them manipulate you, okay? And that's not always a bad thing. That's just what happens a lot of the time. So you really cannot enjoy healthy relationships without boundaries. You just can't, okay? They don't function without them. And it's up to you to let people know what is and isn't okay for you. Other people really don't know a lot of the time. So it's up to you to decide what you need in a relationship, what you accept, what you'll allow, what you'll accommodate, and what you'll tolerate, okay? And how often you'll do that. So here are a couple of things to help you think about this. Really, it's not up to anyone but you that gets to decide what's right for you and what's acceptable. You know, a lot of times, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser, you learn how to accommodate other people at the sacrifice of knowing what you actually need. So there's some healing that might need to happen here, but really where that comes from is defining for yourself what it is that matters to you and what you need to feel safe. And that looks different. That's a very personal thing for everybody, but unless you define it, you can't steward it well, okay? So here are 3 things to help you with boundaries. All right. Number 1 is define them. Define what is acceptable to you in relationship. Define what you will accommodate. Define what you will tolerate, and define what you'll accept and what you won't. And so sometimes this comes from backing into this, this comes from defining what you won't. Define what you won't tolerate. Define what you won't accept. Define what you won't accommodate. Define what you won't allow. What was my first word? Accept. Define what you won't accept, right? So coming at what we don't want is a really great way to determine what you do, but it's way, way valuable to really assess what you need, what you want, right? Because this defining process is really where it's at. Because unless you get crystal clear on this, it gets really messy in relationships. So maybe look at the non-negotiables, the deal breakers, maybe look at those first, but really do a lot of the extra work on getting crystal clear on what is acceptable, on what you're going to bring, on what the value you provide, the value you bring to the table, what is acceptable for you, what your capacity is. Be clear about what you bring also, okay? So that's number one, define it. Number two is you've got to announce this to people because people can't read your mind. They just can't. So here's some steps for how to do that, because a lot of times this can feel confrontational, but it doesn't have to be. So number one is informing other people. And that can look like a simple conversation. Okay. So this one can be pretty basic, especially early on in the relationship. It's really important that you announce this so you don't have to do that work later, the cleanup work. Number two is inform other people when your boundaries have been violated. Okay. They don't know a lot of times unless you tell them. And if they do know, they need to know that you also know, and that's not okay. And you're not going to tolerate that, or you're not going to accommodate that behavior. You're not going to accept somebody speaking to you that way. Okay. You've got to communicate that. Otherwise, somebody thinks that they can just pull a fast one on you or that you'll just take it. Right. And especially if we've formed unhealthy patterns with other people, this can be harder to do. Okay. The next one is make your request. So if somebody has violated a boundary, let them know, but give them the new request. Okay. So this is almost like, I'll let that first pass slide, but this is what I need moving forward. And if you can't deliver that, if you can't offer that, then that leads to consequences. So you've got to enforce boundaries too. There's got to be a real consequence. Otherwise, it's not really a boundary. So what that means is you have to be willing to take a stand for yourself and let a relationship go if need be. Maybe not permanently, but be willing to let a relationship go if it's not honoring you, if it's not serving you. In fact, if it's very unhealthy for you, you have to be willing to take a stand for yourself because nobody can do that but you. Okay. And so the goal with all of this is not to be aggressive, not to prove a point, not to punish, not to have your way, none of that. It's not an ego-driven thing. The goal of this is safety and respect for yourself and for whoever you're in relationship with. So it's really important to have this awareness and have the courage and the strength to steward this well, because then you can actually feel safe and have a lot of freedom in a relationship, which is meant to be, right? And then, yes, that would be number three. So number three would be willing to accept that, especially if you are late in the game in a relationship, to enforce boundaries, that you do have to be willing to let relationships go that no longer serve you. They might have served you for a time, a season, right? But they might not be healthy for you moving forward. So you have to be willing to let them go. So these are the 3 steps again to define really for yourself how to work your boundaries. Okay. So number 1 is define what your boundaries are. Define what they are for different relationships. That's also something you can do. You can define what it is for family. You can define what it is for work. You can define what it is for yourself. That probably should be where you start. You can define what it is for volunteering, for ministry, for whatever, right? But you really want to define, even for yourself, what will you accept from yourself? Will you accept limited thinking and victim thinking? Will you accept that? Will you accept those thoughts when they're running through your head? Will you accept excuses? Will you accept that? Right? Will you accommodate your bad habits? Will you do that? Will you make it easy for you to make mistakes and to screw up and to give into temptation? Will you do that? Will you tolerate addictions and bad behavior? Right? Like, this is good stuff. Like, decide what you're going to accept, what you're going to accommodate, what you're going to allow, and what you're going to tolerate. So sometimes we think, well, if we're not actually doing something, then we don't have to clean it up. But if you allow certain things, like, will you allow negative information to flood your mind? Will you allow yourself to listen to things that aren't growing you in any kind of way? Will you allow yourself to speak death and cursing over your life? Will you allow that? Okay, so these are examples of how you even just self-check yourself, right? So the same honor, the same discipline, the same self-control, the same love, really, that you give yourself, you then hold space to give that to somebody else, and you model it with yourself. That's where the integrity starts from. The same way that you love and honor and respect yourself is the same way that you'll love, honor, and respect somebody else. So that's what I mean by when I say at the very beginning that boundaries are a statement of personal and mutual respect. I respect myself. I honor myself. I know my worth. And I'm also going to honor, respect, and recognize your worth. Okay? And to do that, I need to communicate what's acceptable for me, what is not acceptable for me, what I'm going to accommodate, what I'm not going to accommodate, so we're clear, what I'm going to allow and what I'm not going to allow, what I'm going to tolerate and what I'm not going to tolerate. Because if I don't do that, right, the wheat and the tare, they go together. And I can't do what I'm here on this earth to do if I get off the path. And if I get distracted and if I get caught up in stuff that I could have prevented. That's on me. That's my responsibility, right? Your behavior and how you show up, that's you. Okay, so here's the steps again. Define for yourself what your boundaries are. Your boundaries with yourself, your boundaries with all the relationships that are in your life, whether that's family, whether that's work, whether that's ministry, whether it's whatever, friendships, partnerships, define that. Then you've got to announce it to the people that you're in relationship with. So this comes with, what people talk about in your presence, if they gossip, if you're going to tolerate that or not. It comes up with how much access they have. It comes with a lot of things. But decide what you are going to have your boundaries be, then announce it to people. And these were the steps to announce it. Inform them if they violated it. And this is a one-on-one kind of conversation. This is not calling somebody out and creating some sort of embarrassment or discomfort. This is a very one-on-one thing, okay? Then if it's been violated, you give the new request, okay? So I know that I've communicated to you that this is important to me and I need you to honor that. However, the way this happened did not honor that and it made me feel unsafe. And this is what I'm asking, that you do this next time or you keep this in mind, right? And then watch what happens. If this person can't honor that, you have to be willing, this is step 3, you have to be willing to take a stand for yourself and release a relationship if it's not healthy. And it seems like this person is intentionally not hearing you, not listening to you, not honoring you, not respecting you. You should never tolerate that, okay? So really, boundaries give you the freedom to be who you are without the pressure of being who other people need you to be, okay? And only you are the highest authority of your own thoughts, of your own emotions, of yourself. You can't put that work on anybody else, okay? So keep in mind that boundaries are actually a really beautiful thing. They don't have to be a big, hairy, scary, nasty thing at all. It's just, it requires a lot of work, the personal work, the quiet work that nobody sees behind the scenes, that private time, right? It requires a lot of that to really know and understand and honor and respect yourself. That takes work, okay? But when you do that, you attract different people and you're able to respect them and honor them where they're at too, without needing to change them, without needing to force an agenda, without needing to manipulate. And you'll also recognize that for yourself too. It'll keep a safe space around you that you've cultivated. People shouldn't be able to violate that. Okay. And the same thing, you don't want to violate what their comfort is too. So for people that don't know about boundaries, you can still model the way. And if they can't honor you, that's okay. Not good, bad, right, or wrong here, but not a fit for you. And that needs to be something that you recognize, that you don't get caught up in things that were never meant for you. Okay. So I would love to hear what you think about boundaries. But remember, the goal here is safety and respect. This is not a punishing thing. This is not a scary thing. This is not a confrontational thing necessarily. Sometimes it's a healthy confrontation, okay? But this is meant to keep people safe in relationships so that they can feel honored, respected, valued, appreciated, and really free in relationship. And it's such a blessing when you can be who you are without the pressure of needing to be anybody else when you're in relationship. So I dare you to try this on. And until next time, guys, stay blessed.